At first, he thought it was just a mosquito bite. A small bump on his arm, slightly red, a little swollen. Nothing unusual. He had recently returned from a rainforest trip through Central America, where insect bites were constant. Mosquitoes, flies, gnats. By the time he boarded his flight home, his skin was already covered in dozens of tiny, itchy marks. So when he noticed one more bump, he ignored it. But over the next few days, something changed. The swelling didn't disappear. It grew larger, harder, more painful, and then came the feeling that would completely change the way he viewed his own body forever. Movement. Something moving beneath his skin. At first, he convinced himself it was impossible. Maybe it was muscle twitching, maybe nerves, maybe inflammation. Anything except the obvious thought trying to force its way into his mind. Because human beings are psychologically wired to reject one specific fear above almost all others. Infestation. The idea that another living creature is inside the body, not attacking from the outside, but living within. And yet, every day the sensation became harder to ignore. Late at night, when the room became quiet, he could feel it, a faint shifting sensation beneath the swollen skin of his arm. Tiny movements, slow pressure, as though something alive was turning beneath the surface. The bump itself looked strange. At the center was a small dark hole, no larger than the tip of a pencil. Sometimes fluid leaked from it. Other times, it remained perfectly still. But no matter how many creams or antibiotics he used, nothing improved. The swelling remained, and the movement continued. Eventually, fear overcame denial. He went to a doctor. At first glance, even the doctor assumed it was an infected bite, a localized skin infection, possibly an abscess. But then the patient said something disturbing. "I can feel it moving." The doctor paused, because in tropical medicine, that sentence means something very specific. There are parasites in the world capable of living beneath human skin, and one of the most infamous is the human botfly. The man explained that he had recently traveled through rainforest regions where mosquitoes were everywhere. That detail immediately raised concern, because botflies rarely infect humans directly. Instead, they use mosquitoes as delivery systems. Female botflies capture mosquitoes in midair and glue their eggs onto the insect's body. Then they release the mosquito back into the environment. The mosquito continues feeding normally, but when it lands on human skin, body heat triggers the eggs to hatch. Tiny larvae emerge instantly and begin entering the skin through bite wounds, hair follicles, or microscopic openings. Most victims never feel it happen, and days later, a parasite begins growing beneath the skin. The doctor examined the swelling more closely. The hole at the center was still visible, and then something happened that confirmed everyone's fear. The opening moved, just slightly, but enough. Something inside had reacted. The patient later described the moment as pure psychological horror, because until then, part of him still believed it might be an infection. But infections do not move. The diagnosis was now clear. Botfly infestation. A living larva was growing beneath his skin, and it had likely been there for weeks. The human botfly is considered one of the most advanced parasitic insects on Earth. Not because it is large, not because it is aggressive, but because its entire survival strategy depends on stealth. The parasite does not want to kill the host immediately. It wants shelter, warmth, protection. A living body provides all three. And once the larva enters the skin, it begins transforming the human body into a temporary home. Beneath the surface, the larva feeds on tissue fluids while slowly growing larger. It anchors itself using rows of microscopic backward-facing hooks covering its body. These hooks prevent easy removal. The deeper it grows, the more securely attached it becomes. And through the tiny breathing hole at the surface, the parasite receives oxygen. Alive, hidden, growing silently beneath human flesh. The doctor explained that simply squeezing the swelling could be dangerous. If the larva ruptured inside the skin, bacterial infection could spread rapidly. Instead, the parasite needed to be removed carefully. So they began a procedure used for centuries in tropical medicine. They blocked its air supply. Petroleum jelly was applied over the breathing hole. Then the waiting began. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Then suddenly, the hole widened. Something beneath the skin started moving violently. The parasite was suffocating, desperate for oxygen, instinctively forcing itself upward toward the surface. And then, For the first time, the man saw part of the creature emerge from his own body. Witnesses described the room falling silent. A pale, segmented body slowly pushed through the opening, twisting, moving, alive. The doctor quickly grabbed forceps and pulled carefully, slowly, steadily, because the hooks along the larva's body resisted removal. Then finally, the creature slid free, nearly an inch long, thick, pale, covered in tiny black spines, still moving in the metal tray beside the patient. The man later admitted that seeing the parasite outside his body frightened him more than the pain itself, because the reality became undeniable. Something had been living inside him, feeding beneath his skin, growing inside his flesh while he continued living his normal life. After removal, the swelling slowly healed. But psychologically, the experience never truly disappeared. For weeks afterward, every itch triggered anxiety. Every insect bite caused panic. Even normal muscle twitches became terrifying. Because once the human brain experiences the idea of infestation, it becomes extremely difficult to forget. And cases like this are not rare. Every year, travelers returning from tropical regions discover parasites growing beneath their skin, most commonly in Central America, South America, and rainforest environments where botflies thrive. Doctors specializing in tropical diseases report patients describing identical symptoms: a swelling that never heals, sharp stinging pain, fluid leakage, and most disturbingly, movement beneath the skin. Some patients even record visible motion using their phone cameras, tiny ripples beneath the flesh as the larva changes position. Proof that the organism inside is not only alive, but active. But from an evolutionary perspective, the botfly is a masterpiece of survival engineering. Think about how precise this system really is. The fly avoids danger by never approaching humans directly. It uses mosquitoes as transportation. It responds automatically to body heat. It infiltrates skin almost invisibly. It creates its own breathing system. And it anchors itself securely inside living tissue. Every stage is optimized. Every detail refined across millions of years of evolution. Not through intelligence, but through natural selection favoring whatever survives best. And unfortunately for humans, this strategy works extremely well. Scientists continue studying parasites like botflies because they reveal extraordinary biological adaptations. Researchers analyze how parasites evade immune systems, survive inside living tissue, manipulate hosts, and heal surrounding wounds while feeding. Some studies even suggest that understanding parasite biology could improve future medical treatments involving tissue repair and chronic wound healing, which creates an uncomfortable truth. Even horrifying organisms can contain biological secrets valuable to science. But none of that changes the terror victims experience once they realize what happened to them. Because the fear is deeper than physical pain. It attacks identity itself. Human beings trust their bodies. We assume our skin separates us from the outside world, that it protects us. But parasites like botflies expose a terrifying weakness. Sometimes the body is not a barrier. Sometimes it becomes a habitat. Right now, somewhere deep in a tropical rainforest, another mosquito is carrying invisible eggs through the humid air, waiting. And somewhere nearby, someone is brushing insects away from their arm, never imagining that one tiny bite could lead to something alive growing beneath their skin. Something hidden, something feeding, something moving in the darkness beneath human flesh. And somewhere tonight, another person may suddenly wake up, feeling something shift beneath their skin for the very first time.